What's up, everybody? The Aerie Lord is here. Welcome back to another Walking Dead vlog. Today, we're going to be doing a discussion vlog, a very interesting character insight video. Bit of spoiler warning, and I'm going to put that out there right now. If you have not seen the most recent episodes of The Walking Dead or read certain parts of The Walking Dead comics that encapsulate those episodes of the show, this will be a spoiler for you. But after seeing Alpha's last scene in the Walking Dead television show where she was decapitated by Negan, the exact same fate that she had in the comics, I got to thinking about Alpha's character and about the Whispers in general, and it harkens back to a statement that I've made in many of my review vlogs for Season 10, and I wanted to echo that here. And just ask you guys, and maybe give a case for why I think Alpha is probably The Walking Dead's greatest villain. Now, let me just preface that I am a Negan guy. Negan is probably one of my favorite villains in all of, not just The Walking Dead, but in all of entertainment history. And that includes movies, video games, animated shows, all sorts of entertainment functions. Negan is probably the guy with his swagger, his humor, his fashion sense, his choice of weapon, many things. And not to jump into I might make a separate vlog about Negan, not to make this vlog all about Negan, but what I'm saying is Negan's awesome, and you guys will know that I actually have many of his cosplay outfits. I have a jacket that's an exact replica of his black leather jacket. I met the man himself, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who plays him, and yeah, I am a huge Negan fan. You guys know that. I mean, I have so many vlogs on my channel from stretching all the way back to 2016, where I actually bought a barbed wire baseball bat. Yes, a real barbed wire baseball bat. And showed it off in my ultimate cosplay guide. Now, I also met the woman behind the mask, Samantha Morton. This was at the same Walker Stalker event, which I believe might be the last one they'll ever do. Because, just there was a lot of reasons. I won't get into it, but from all reports, it seems like that's probably the last one that'll ever be held. And so it was. I was lucky enough to obviously get to meet two of the top villains of The Walking Dead, and I just have to say, I mean, Samantha Morton being one of the nicest people out there, and I remember I went up to her at Walker Stalker. They didn't allow photos to be taken at her table, and I said to her, "You're probably the scariest villain on this show, and one of the the greatest things to ever happen to this show." And she's like, "Oh, really? You think so?" And she had a British accent, but she was genuinely happy to receive that feedback, and I was more than happy to give it to her, and got an autograph from her on a season 9 poster, I believe, of The Walking Dead. It was like a reprint of something they had on the Talking Dead show that I purchased from the website, but. To get back to what I had said at the beginning of the vlog, I have said numerous times that I have loved the way the Whisperers have been handled in now seasons 9 and 10. I'm not sure if they're going to cross over into season 11. There's still... This upcoming episode, in episode 13, is going to be Michonne's last episode, so I don't think we're going to have a focus on the Whispers. So 14, 15, and 16 of Season 10, we're going to at least get 3 more episodes of the Whispers. And I, having not seen those episodes yet, but having seen enough for me to give my verdict, I can say that the Whispers have been a very, very epic part of The Walking Dead. I think a lot of people during season 7 and 8, and again, let me repeat that I absolutely love Negan as a villain, but I think that when Negan came onto the scene, he made life for the survivors, Rick and the group, very bleak. I think it became like it just became this sort of post-apocalyptic warriors where there was so many of them. You were keeping track of all of these humans that maybe had bland personalities. As epic as Negan was, I don't think he could save all of the other saviors, because their army was so vast. And in a way, they all just kind of were assholes. In one way or another, they exhibited the same quality. That the saviors were a bunch of douchebags, power hungry. They were calling themselves saviors, but they were in such a position of power that they could easily abuse their power, as they did with all of the communities that were in the show. And so, people, I think, over the course of 2 seasons got really, 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 really bored with this concept. And they just kind of saw it as a nail being smashed into the wall over and over and over again, and they just weren't having it. As epic as Negan was, they just were not having it. And I think what people liked about The Walking Dead when it first came on air was the horror. Zombies are a component of the horror genre. This show and the comic book is a true appreciation of the work of George Romero and the zombie classics of the 80s and 90s. And the man Greg Nicotero, who worked on some of those things in his youth, obviously coming from humble roots, knows that horror and, slimy, icky zombie effects with blood and teeth and rotting flesh, that's really what makes The Walking Dead The Walking Dead. When you see cosplay of walkers and you see, Zombie Girl, or the girl whose body was chopped in half, who Rick, one of the first walkers that Rick ever kills, there's a horror component to that, and I think those first 6 episodes, the first season of The Walking Dead, people loved the sheer panic. And it wasn't from any group like the Saviors, a bunch of power-hungry marauders who have taken charge in the apocalypse. It was just the sheer panic of these mindless zombies, these mindless animals who could literally just eat you alive, or worse, turn you into one of them. And people of the complaints I saw over the course of season 7 and 8, people said that the show had gotten away from that type of horror. That we were slowly, that The Walking Dead was slowly losing what made it so great in those early seasons. Yes, season 2 was very slow at the farm, and yes, season 3 was a little fast-paced with the governor's arc. But I think for the most part, people appreciated the horror. Especially, I think most Walking Dead fans, even the ones that have left the show, fans who just have stopped watching, everyone can say that that first season was incredible. That's what propelled the series into the popularity, and it made it into what it is today. So, to now get back to the Whispers, I think the Whispers accomplished that. And I think Angela Kang had a situational awareness of what the Whispers could be and what they could reintroduce. She saw these people, these are people, living people who were wearing the flesh of walkers, so they exhibited all of the scariness and the horror and the dread that the walkers of the first season, and any walker that's ever scared an audience member, they exhibited those qualities, but there was a human being underneath the skin who could move at a moment's notice. So there's this extra element of, are they really a zombie, or are they going to start moving? Are they going to pull out a knife or a gun? And it's this extra layer. So you not only you have like horror on top of horror. You have horror because there's walkers, and then you have horror that there's a human who's manipulating walkers, that they literally have like become walkers, that they walk with the walkers. They use them to defend themselves and as a shield. The Guardians, they call walkers Guardians. They don't even call them walkers. They don't want, in the most recent episode, in episode 12, when Negan puts that soldier out of his misery, Alpha's angry because she doesn't want them being killed in the head, because that means that they can't come back and turn as walkers. So there was just, immediately there was a sense of horror. The hearing zombies talk, whisper. Like, there's something different from reading it on a comic book page and then hearing it, like the little whispers, and it's just like, it's almost like it's like an evil ASMR. It grips you to your core because you're like, whoa, these, I'm used to hearing growling noises of hunger from these walkers, but like whispering, like that's a human thing. Like, their zombies aren't smart enough. Like, what the hell is going on here? And those first 3 episodes of season, after Rick departed in the helicopter, it was immediately, actually, in episode 5 of season 9, he leaves in the helicopter, and then episode 6, 7, and 8, up until the mid-season finale of season 9, all of those episodes dealt with the whispers, and they each had a different creepy element where you're like not completely sure who they are, what's going on, why are these walkers moving in these odd formations. And the graveyard sequence, I think, was our first moment of encapsulating like how awesome, epic, and scary. I mean, a graveyard is literally, these zombies coming back from the dead. That's the old classic with the zombie coming out of the gravestone and coming back to life. And you have the whispers, the big showdown, the first introduction of these scary beasts happening in this graveyard. And you didn't even have your A-list, known villains. Like, we didn't have this epic introduction of Alpha in that sequence. It was just a random whisperer that took out Jesus and showed us that these people are to be reckoned with. And that's one angle. So there's 2 angles to this discussion. So the first angle is how the Whisperers as a group brought back the horror aspect to The Walking Dead. And the second is it's for people who have read the comics. I think this is more of a comparison between Alpha in the comics and Alpha in the show. Because as a comic book reader, and I have read the Walking Dead comics, I read a good chunk of them before I saw the show. All right, just to preface that. But I was always, and I've said this in multiple review vlogs for the show, I was always so disappointed with how Kirkman handled Alpha. I thought that she was a weak, ineffective villain, and we got flashes of character development, but she was so short-lived that I don't feel like we got the true sense of her character. Negan, awesome in the comics because he can say every swear word there is in the English language, and it's amazing. Censored in the show, but still equally as epic. But I just feel like Alpha, like, we didn't really get to know her. In the comic, Alpha is first introduced in a sequence similar to the Graveyard, where one of our heroes goes to kill a walker, the walker moves, and then Alpha takes her shotgun and points it at the person and starts speaking, and the guy kind of freaks out. Then there's the scenes from Season 9 where Lydia's captured, Alpha goes to the gates, Lydia is returned to the Whisperers in exchange for 2 people that they captured. In the comics, it's Carl. In the show, it's Henry. But the same thing happens where they have a crush on Lydia and chase after them. And they stay with the Whispers for a period of time. But then things split off. Because after that, it's very, very quick. Where Alpha, all of a sudden, a few issues later, Alpha just all of a sudden appears at the fair. And she decapitates her victims, puts them on the spikes. Rick comes to get Carl. Alpha shows Rick the giant horde and makes her threats. And then she tells Rick that they have the territory border and that he should head north and he'll see the border. And then he sees the heads on the spikes. And then you go into all of the season 10 stuff where everyone, silence the Whispers. People want to raise an army to fight them. But the Negan stuff happens immediately after that. So there's no moment to really rest with Alpha's characters and the dynamic that she has. We don't get any sort of dynamic with Alpha and Lydia especially. Lydia in the comics does reject Alpha when Rick comes to get Carl, right before Rick sees the head pike sequence. But think about the scene in the show when Daryl and Alpha have that one-on-one fight. They're both bleeding out in the gas station, and then Lydia comes in, and Alpha wants her to kill her, and she should take over. But then Lydia saves Daryl's life, and then Alpha's like, you know what? My daughter has rejected me twice now. I'm free from being, because that was always what held Alpha back. And we never got a sense in the comics. Alpha dies still being weak, still never making it. So that scene at the end of episode 10 of season 10, where Alpha's bleeding out, and then Lydia comes, and Lydia rejects her a second time in the gas station, that never happens in the comics. So when Alpha dies in the comics, Negan cuts her head off, but it's after Alpha has a teary confession like, oh, I still miss my daughter and I'm still weak. But in the show, Alpha sheds that and says, you know what? I'm going to turn my daughter into a walker, and she's going to be free. And in their crazy psychology, they see that as freeing people. So I'm going to free Lydia. And, she asks Negan's help in that endeavor, and they end up using that twist with the whole shack sequence, and they use that in explaining why she kind of has to die. And it was always, and I see that that's a great expansion of her character. Like, isn't that such an awesome expansion of her character? Because in the comics, we don't really have much time with Alpha at all. She beheads the people, puts their heads on the spikes, and the next time we have a scene with Alpha, it's when Negan shows up and starts flirting with her, and Alpha is not having any of it, and there's certainly no sex scene like there is in the show, and there's no, like, I feel like in the show, Negan and Alpha didn't have, I wouldn't say they were a couple. They definitely had feelings for each other. There was certainly a romantic gesture made at the end of that episode right before Alpha is decapitated. They have this long kiss before she makes her way to the fake shack. And at first I was like, okay, she just let Negan have sex with her as a reward. She said it was a reward for finding the spy. But again, I think there is something, and Samantha Morton echoed this in her breakdown of the episode, that there is something that Alpha finds fiery and feisty about Negan. It's something that she never had in her husband, which, again, we never had that in the comic book. They never mentioned Alpha's first husband. They never mentioned where Alpha was. We had 2 sets of flashback scenes. One where they were in that camp, that lockdown camp where Alpha was with her husband and a young Lydia, where she chokes out that guy on the floor. And then we had the other flashback sequence when Lydia and Alpha bump into Beta inside that facility, and you see how those 2 characters met. And again, we didn't have any of that in the comics. And I know it's much harder to illustrate in storyboard flashbacks. There's really not even something that's you can really do in a comic book. It's kind of hard to utilize that tactic to do a flashback. But I think in general, the character of Alpha is much better in the show. And one of the reasons I follow the show, being a fan of the comics, is because I think there are many things that the show has done better than the comics. And Robert Kirkman joked, he's like, oh, it's kind of like Gimple and the staff are rewriting. Like, when I see something in the show that's not the same as how I did it in the comics, I see that as them saying that I did it wrong. And he was probably joking when he made that remark. But to some degree, it's true. And paired with the horror aspect that I talked about as the first point of this vlog, and all of the extra character development that they gave Alpha, I think she makes for an intriguing, scary, psychotic, but just animalistic villain. I think animalistic is the best adjective to describe her because she believes her psychology in her own crazy world. You know, freeing Lydia by killing her and making her a walker because she's not obedient. It's almost like an animal system. You know, Alpha's been challenged and she has to take on that challenge. It's a level of warped psychology that we really can't understand, but it's primitive. It's almost like she wants to be a walker, and because the meaning of this show is the scariness of the walkers and surviving from the walkers, I think that's what makes her so great. She is basically, and I've kind of figured this out as I was talking this whole vlog, Alpha is basically a walker villain. The closest thing we can get to a mindless walker villain. We know that none of the walkers are smart. They can't suddenly start talking and reasoning and picking up tools and stuff. They're just mindless beings that can exist in many forms. You know, their freaking bodies can be chopped in half. They can have their severed head and it can still be, you know, chomping down like Alpha's is at the end. But I think that by wearing the skins and mocking the motions and making the sounds and the whispering, it's basically a walker villain that has all of the smarts of a human who is manipulating and one step ahead. And I didn't even mention the spy in Dante. If you guys remember, frickin' Dante, the evil doctor, whose character in the comics was in no way a traitor. He actually hooks up with Maggie at the hilltop in the comics, but in the show, Dante is a traitorous son of a bitch who poisons the water and creates a hole creates a hole underneath Alexandria and kills Sadiq. And this was all a maneuver by Alpha to be one step ahead and have a spy on the inside to make sure that her enemies are where she wants them. And that, again, was not in the comics. So all these extra layers make her so awesome. It just makes her so awesome. It's, like I said, a walker villain. And the fact that Kirkman showed, like, you know, signs of this, it always frustrated me that he never knew where he wanted to take the Whisperer storyline. Because I felt that after Alpha died in the comics, the Whisperers were never the same. It felt like they didn't have a purpose at all. It felt like they were just, they were revenge seeking. They just wanted revenge for Alpha's death, and that was it. And then the survivors dealt with the Horde, dealt with them, just kind of picked them off one by one, and slowly but surely the Whisperers died, and their philosophy, their psychology, everything about them faded from existence. And it didn't seem to leave any mark in the world except the fact that Lydia had integrated herself in society and left that horrible lifestyle. But other than that, the Whisperers just kind of went out with a whisper. They were as quiet coming in as they were quiet coming out. And in the show, so here's the thing. I'm making this vlog, and I haven't watched a single episode post Alpha's death. So, how will the Whisperers be? But I still think, though, we got the use out of Alpha's character. I felt that it was her time to go. I felt that Negan, yes, he had that deal with Carol, but I think that Negan was kind of giving Alpha a second chance because he's like, do you really want to kill your daughter? Really? Like, just think about this. Your only daughter. You really want to freaking kill her? I just think Negan was trying to knock some sense into this woman who is just so stuck in her ways and just so unbelievably shaped by this world and how just cruel it is. And Negan's like, I can't get through. Maybe if I was having any second thoughts, those just died. And this is basically like a rabid dog. It's a rabid dog. Maybe at one point it showed signs of being somewhat human, but it's just this wild animal that's going to keep hurting things if I don't deal with the problem, and thus he dealt with it. So in conclusion, without making this too long, I think I got my 2 points across about the scary horror aspect and also how Alpha's character was much better in the show and why it is the encapsulation of such a great villain. those are kind of my points wrapped up in a nutshell. I feel like all of the other villains we've had in the show, Gareth, the governor, Negan, they're all humans who are marauders in a sense. You know, the governor was a little whacked. Gareth was also a little whacked, eating people. But the thing is, they all had human aspects to them. I know there's not much humanity in eating people, but Gareth still had a code, a principle. He still, more or less, acted like a person. But Alpha, just the way she acts is so animalistic. It almost defies how humans are supposed to be. Humans have a mind, intellect. They can think. They can spin philosophies, tell stories. They have these tools that they've built and used that put them above animals on the evolutionary chain. And Alpha sees the world as a sign that they have to go back to what animals are, and that the world collapsing was a sign of the counter, that humans should be animals, and that the fact that they're trying to go back, the group in, Alexandria, Hilltop, and Kingdom were trying to go back to the old ways. You're trying to hold on to the false promises, and the world fell, and that was our big sign that things were horrible. So why are you trying to go back to that? So it's a twisted character, and again, like, it works with the world because it brings you back to that horror, and I think it was done very, very well, and I applaud Samantha Morton for her work. I am so honored to have been able to meet her and get her signature, and I wish her the best in all of her endeavors, and bravo to Angela Kang as well for realizing the potential of this character and not copying her arc in the comic beat by beat, because her arc would have been very disappointing and short-lived, as Kirkman did. I think it was one of Kirkman's worst decisions and worst character developments he had as a villain in that comic series he wrote. And I think the show has greatly, greatly, greatly improved Alpha and made her a true villain. And people, I think, mostly are satisfied with her death. Her death was well-deserved, well-coming. Wanting to kill your daughter, I think that's a step too far. And it had to be done. So, hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. I have much more time to make them, given, well, when this comes out and when I'm filming it, certain things going on in the world that allow me to be in an environment to make my own content. So, I will keep doing that. And I thought that this was a cool topic to discuss, and I wanted to do that with you guys. So, alright. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any other topic videos you'd like me to cover, because I have a bunch, and I was thinking of maybe doing a Michonne dedication video, because I know this upcoming episode is her last one, and I want to give her a proper send-off, because she has been in the series and impacted it for many years. So, okay. Thank you guys. Peace out. See you later.